Keeping Interference at Bay, a comprehensive guide to the EMC Directive for electronic devices. The EMC Directive, also known as the Electromagnetic Compatibility Directive, ensures the electronic and electrical equipment does not generate electromagnetic disturbances, or it's not affected by it. It is managed mainly through the European Commission EMC Directive 2014/30/EU and applies to most devices that emit electromagnetic emissions. However, there are exclusions for certain equipment, and other directives cover the EMC requirements. To comply with the directive, you can choose to self-declare or obtain certificates to evidence through testing. Testing requirements depend on the type of product, and there are over 150 harmonized standards that fall under this directive only. Compliance will help strengthen your competitive position in the market. Join us as Nadine, our compliance officer at the Atomic, takes us through the complexities of the EMC Directive in a detailed and informative manner.
Hi there, let's get into the EMC Directive. So the EMC Directive is also known as the Electromagnetic Compatibility Directive, and it falls under the CE Directive. So as you know, all electronic equipment emits electrical energy. In many cases, those pulses of electrical energy interact with one another and can cause interference. Electromagnetic interference, or EMI, is one of those annoying things where the operation of a device is disrupted when in the presence of a device which emits electrical energy. In practical terms, this looks like, for example, your radio's electrical pulses interacting with the electrical lines nearby. This interference is also why airplane staff tells us to switch off all portable electrical devices, or PEDs, during a flight. Although airplane systems undergo scrupulous testing according to the electromagnetic standards, some PEDs may not be subject to the same equipment qualification and certification processes, and this could result in EMI, which causes turbulence and other complications. The EMC Directive was put into place because most devices these days have electromagnetic emissions. Within Europe, the EMC regulation is managed mainly through the European Commission's EMC Directive, which is EMC Directive 2014/30/EU, and for the radio equipment through EMC Directive 2014/53/EU. If your product falls under one of these directives, you will not be obligated to use a notified body unless otherwise required. The EMC Directive ensures that electronic and electrical equipment does not generate electromagnetic disturbance or is not affected by it. There are many types of equipment which are excluded from the EMC Directive. However, EMC requirements for most of them are also included in other directives and regulations. For example, for medical devices, especially active implantable medical devices, or AIMD, the Directive 89/334/EEC applies. This directive covers all the EMC requirements related to the specific type of medical device and will ensure that the product is compliant in all aspects related to electromagnetic compatibility. This includes not generating electromagnetic disturbance which could interfere with other electronics, but also ensuring that the product has an intrinsic immunity to electromagnetic disturbance and will not be disturbed by electromagnetic disturbance from other electronics. You can find all the standards which fall under the EMC Directive on the website of the European Commission. Now, you already know what I'm going to say. Certificates of evidence are better than self-declarations, but the risk is all up to you. In cases that you do want to go the testing route for your electrical or electronic product, you would need to consult with a regulatory expert and an accredited lab who has knowledge of EMC legislation guidelines and standards. The lab will determine the testing requirements which are involved, depending on the type of product you are trying to sell. There are over 150 harmonized standards which fall under this directive, and they can all be found on the European Commission's website. According to the Academy of EMC, the most common EMC standards for a consumer electrical product is conducted immunity and emission, radiated immunity and emission, electrostatic discharge or ESD, harmonics and flicker, and alternating current voltage dips, drops, and interruptions. The technical dossier needs to be laid out according to Annex 2 of the EMC Directive for a product under this scope of electrical and electronics sector. Remember that these conformity tests will help strengthen your competitive position in the market, which is a great reason for going through with them. And that's it about the EMC Directive. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's move on.